Our first movie tells the story of a friendship behind prison walls that spans more than 20 years.
So welcome to episode 11 of Middlebrow Madness, an exercise in podcast hubris. My name is Derek Gane.
In a July appearance on the comedian Joe Rogan's podcast, Jordan Peterson explained how Michaela's experience had convinced him to eliminate everything but meat and leafy greens from his diet, and then in the last 2 months he had gone full meat and eliminated vegetables. Since he changed...
Full meat is like the next knuckle tats I'm getting.
Since he changed his diet, his laundry list of maladies has disappeared, he told Rogan. His lifelong depression, anxiety, gastric reflux and associated snoring, inability to wake up in the mornings, psoriasis, gingivitis, floaters in his right eye, numbness on the sides of his legs, problems with mood regulation, all of it is gone, and he attributes it to his diet. I'm certainly intellectually at my best, he said. I'm stronger, I can swim better, and my gum disease is gone. It's like, what the hell? Do you take any vitamins? Asked Rogan. No, I eat beef and salt and water, that's it. And I never cheat, ever, not even a little bit. No soda, no wine. I drink club soda. Well, that's still water. Well, if you're down to that level, no it's not, Joe. There's club soda, which is really bubbly. There's Perrier, which is sort of bubbly. There's flat water, and there's hot water. These distinctions start to become important. Peterson reiterated several times that he is not giving dietary advice, but said that many attendees of his recent speaking tour have come up to him and said the diet is working for them. The takeaway for listeners is that it worked for Peterson, so it may work for them. Rogan also clarified that, although he was not an expert, he is fascinated by the fact that he hasn't heard any negative stories about people who have started an all-meat diet. Now this next part is why I wanted to read this for you. This is wonderful, so get ready for it.
Okay, so all of this was set up. Here's the punchline.
Yes. Well, I have a negative story, said Peterson. Both Michaela and I noticed that when we restricted our diet and then ate something we weren't supposed to, the reaction was absolutely catastrophic. He gives the example of having had some apple cider and subsequently being incapacitated for a month by what he believes was an inflammatory response. You were down for a month? Oh yeah, it took me out for a month. It was awful. Apple cider? What was it doing to you? It produced an overwhelming sense of impending doom. I seriously mean overwhelming. There's no way I could have lived like that. But see, Michaela knew by then that it would probably only last a month. A month from fucking cider? I didn't sleep that month for 25 days. I didn't sleep at all for 25 days. What? How is that possible? I'll tell you how it's possible. You lay in bed frozen in something approximating terror for 8 hours. And then you get up. So, Derek...
First of all, I want to congratulate you on gobbling up 180 fucking seconds with that bit.
To be fair, I think that everyone listening needs to know that Jordan Peterson, patron saint of the intellectual dark web, was down...
Shame of my nation.
Was down for a month because he drank some apple cider. Because it messed with his all-beef diet. All he eats is beef, salt, and water. Derek, do you think that's a healthy way to live?
That's a piss-poor way to live, and it's right in line with his philosophies on pretty much everything else. Now, my question is, this is not apple cider vinegar.
No.
This is just... Jordan Peterson got drunk because he ate poorly, and his body didn't agree with it, and so he didn't sleep well for a month?
Well, it doesn't say necessarily that it was alcoholic apple cider either. It could have just been like
sparkling cider.
Yeah. I don't have him here, so I can't really ask him any further questions, but this is one of those things that is stuck in my brain for like the past year. Whenever anyone brings up how logical and wonderful Jordan Peterson is, this fact I find to be just marvelous. Also, his list of ailments is like Bob Duca light. Like,
oh, God. How dare you make me empathize with Joe Rogan?
Also,
how dare you?
I wish I had a Joe Rogan impression. I don't have it in my back pocket, but I had my Jordan Peterson impression, so that was good enough.
Well, I think Joe Rogan just sounds shouty and broy and excitable.
He just talks about his third eye and how you have to take ecstasy and MDMA and that chimpanzees are really strong.
It's me, Joe Rogan. I think this is how he sounds like.
That's not
probably
bad.
Not true.
It's not bad. I mean, he didn't sound quite like that when he was on Fear Factor, but...
I know Joe Rogan as, like, the MMA guy.
Yeah, I think that's like been his whole shtick for a while now. I first like learned about him from Fear Factor, obviously the reality show. Did you?
Sure.
Was that a thing in Canada?
It was a thing, but we kind of had our own francophilic version of it called Fort Boyard. It was an imported format from France where it took place on a literal fort island in the middle of the ocean, and it was like stunts and challenges that were kind of Fear Factor-esque. And if you succeeded in doing the challenges, you would get keys, and they had like a little person dressed up in like a getup who would be like the key master,
what?
right? And yeah. And they would have the key. They would like bring the keys. He was like a co-host. And at the end, the idea is that you had to spell out like a keyword that you had to deduce as from a series of clues that you also got. And if you spelled out the right clue, you got a payout in doubloons. It was a whole thing.
There's a lot of layers to that, Derek, that I wasn't expecting at all.
Yeah, I mean, it was, let's just put it this way. It was huge in the Francophonie.
Copy. But we're not here today to talk about Joe Rogan, are we?
I guess not. We're here to talk about the seventh art, motion pictures. Specifically 4 motion pictures. But let's lay out our show's MO a little bit more clearly, because I can understand why people would be a little disoriented by this bit that you've decided to start the show
My name's
with.
Isabel, for those who didn't know. I didn't say that.
And yes, that's right. I mean, that's also the thing with these bits is that I introduce myself, and that's your cue to do your thing. And then invariably you forget to introduce yourself. And now I've got to explain the show. All right. So yes, Middlebrow Madness. What the hell is this anyway? We don't usually talk about The Shame of My Nation, Jordan Peterson, on the show.
Oh,
we usually...
I have some more articles. We will at some point.
Oh, man. Anyway,
movies. I was telling Derek that I have accumulated so many like awful things to like make him listen to on the podcast that we need to have a second podcast just called like, "Hey, the internet sucks, doesn't it?" And I just read things to you and we're both like, "Wow, that sucks."
And here's the thing: I've got no countermeasures. I don't know because what I could do, I have to do within the first 10 seconds of the show.
You have to get in there before I get in there.
I know, and I don't know how I would do that because I still want to introduce the show. I still want to like sort of, I want to ground it at least a little bit before you blast off into orbit with it. Middlebrow fucking madness. Our show. What did we do here? Well, I'm glad you asked, hypothetical listener. We have a big old bracket. 256 movies. 250 of which are sourced from the Internet Movie Database's top 250 films of all time list as of August 2018. The other 6 are wildcard movies that we've selected. 3 from me, 3 from Isabel. And what do we do with these? Well, we face them off head to head until we get a champion. That's right, a single elimination bracket to find the best movie asterisk of all time. We also have vetoes because since this is a 2-person operation, sometimes we won't agree. And we get 4 vetoes for the first round. I have used 1 and Isabel has used 2.
Wait, no. What?
No.
I think I just used 1.
You use yours for 3 Idiots.
Yes. But I have not used the second one.
I used 1 for... Oh, right, because mine
Raging Bull.
Raging Bull, I conceded 1 because it didn't want to use 1 in a recent episode. So we each have...
Yes.
So we each have 3 vetoes left, and I feel like one of them is going to get used today.
Maybe more than 1. We'll see.
Maybe more than 1. Who knows? So right now we're still getting started in the first round. We've got 10 episodes behind us, which means that 20 matchups and 40 films have already been accounted for. What are today's matchups? Well, I'm glad you asked again, hypothetical listener. Our matchups today are Your Name versus Gone Girl and Apocalypse Now versus Before Sunrise. Now, maybe we could start the episode proper 10 minutes in.
I mean, I was literally thinking about just interrupting you and reading Beto O'Rourke's poetry from when he was like a teen hacker. But we'll leave that off the table for right now.
Oh man, which means it's probably going to show up in a future episode. The dynamic of the show, as far as I understand it, 10 episodes in, 11 episodes in, is I tried to make the show happen, and Isabel just makes the internet happen at me.
Hey, people have been very complimentary of the recent episodes, so shout out to people.
Shout outs to people. I mean, I don't get deep stats on this. We could probably sell out like a Lions Hall or something.
Is that like a American Legion?
Kind of, yeah. It's a Canadian American Legion, Hall? Something like that.
Gotcha. I saw a band that would later become Born of Osiris in an American Legion. I don't know if you know any metal bands, Derek, but they're a relatively popular one. I
know some metal bands, but a lot of them are old and people don't like them very much.
Okay. So what I'm saying is we could be the next Born of Osiris of podcasting.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
You know what's one thing I would actually really like is like one of these days we're going to have to do like a test ad read to show people we can actually do those properly, so that way like we can get like Bad Dragon to sponsor us. I'm determined to get Bad Dragon specifically. If we can get other sponsors, that's cool. I want to make that money, but I want Bad Dragon to sponsor us.
At the risk of making our episodes stretch past the 60-minute mark due to bits, I do want to go down this particular rabbit hole a little bit more. It's like Bad Dragon sponsoring us is like wouldn't be the weirdest thing that's happened on the internet, but I do want to think like what would a Middlebrow Madness branded sex toy or marital aid be?
It'd be incredibly difficult to use, way too long, and have too many tangents on it.
So functionally unusable.
Functionally unusable. If there's one thing I can say about our podcast and a dildo made in our image, it would be that.
In our image?
Well,
like a little...
metaphorical image.
Okay, because you're not thinking of like a sex toy with like a little Derek and Isabel effigy on it.
No, it's not like that one like Obama dildo they made that just looked like Obama's face.
They made an Obama dildo?
I'm going to link you to it in Slack. Hold on.
Oh, Lord. Y'all, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for this to be like this. I just wanted to talk about movies. Now we're talking about Obama dildos.
I'm loading up an image. Thank you, Imgur, for this GIF right here.
Oh, my God.
It's not a dirty GIF besides the dildo.
Oh, Lord. Look at that. It's got balls on it, too.
It does.
It looks like the balls look like a butt.
It's just Obama's smiling face. You can get one. I saw one of Jesus as well. That one's a little
edgier.
A little edgier. It's for the real edgelord in the audience.
Speaking of, we get to contend with David Fincher again.
We do.
And our first, didn't think I could pull that.
Look at you pulling us out of the abyss. Thank you, Derek. I appreciate it. Even though I have the Bad Dragon webpage open and I was ready to go. But let's just go for right now. You know what we're talking about? Gone Girl. We're talking about Your Name. Let's go.
Yes. Tail of the tape for our first matchup today. The 78
If anyone knows anyone at Bad Dragon, just like email them and say, hey, I think they have a Twitter at them and be like, hey, listen, this podcast, they like your products. They want to have a sponsorship with you. They do it for free. I would do a Bad Dragon sponsorship for free for one time. If you're going to do more than that, I'd need to get paid. But for one time,
full disclosure, yes, I cannot vouch for the products of the Bad Dragon company.
But hey, maybe if we get sponsored, you'll get like free samples.
Now this is the part where you say if you can vouch for the products of the Bad Dragon company.
Oh no, I think people who follow me on the internet are aware that I've owned some Bad Dragon dongers in my lifetime. Listen, I need to like clarify something here. I'm not particularly interested in fucking any dragons. It's just not something that's like no shade on those who do, for real. Like if that's your thing, totally cool. I just thought that they looked like really cool dildos, and they are ridiculously good quality. Like, I mean, they make sense. I spent like $100 on it, but like, it was it was one of my treats to myself for moving out to the Pacific Northwest.
We haven't even fucking started, and we're 15 minutes deep, and yeah, I mean,
none of this is usable, is it?
I don't know if I will leave that I will leave that to your judgment, Madam Editor.
Okay.
But, I mean, at the very least, they'd make a good conversation piece. Moving on. The Tale of the Tape.
They are
for our
ridiculously well detailed as well.
Isabel, we have to do this.
Yes,
we have to do the show.
Do the thing.
Tale of the Tape for round 1. For match 1, all of these are in round 1. The 78 seed, which was very surprising to me. Your Name, released in 2016, directed by Makoto Shinkai, starring Ryunosuke Kamiki, The Attack of the Bad Handwriting, and Mone Kamishiraishi. And I didn't know this either. Number 4 on Japan's all-time domestic box office, directly behind Spirited Away and directly ahead. It's number 4, so it's like, it's Titanic and Spirited Away and one other movie that I'm forgetting. But number 4 is nothing to sneeze at. Went 3 for 5 at the Japan Academy Prize Awards that year, and a $350 million worldwide box office. So a genuine anime phenomenon.
A smash hit.
And, I know it's a little gauche to quote your own Letterboxd stuff, but God bless the weebs that got this shit in the top 250.
Yes.
Straight up. Facing off against the 179 seed Gone Girl, released in 2014, directed by David Fincher. He's going to try again to get one in round 2. Written by and adapted from the novel by Gillian Flynn, starring Ben Affleck, Rosamund Pike, Carrie Coon, and Tyler Perry. 0 for 1 at the Oscars. The only nomination was Rosamund Pike. And another sort of genuine hit, $160 million domestic box office on a $61 million budget.
Surprisingly, I was very surprised to learn it's Fincher's best grossing movie ever.
Yes, I like the kind of subtle ways these movies rhyme, because they are not the most popular necessarily, but definitely the most financially successful movies by each of these directors. And they both kind of deal with, a relationship unstuck in time and place.
Yeah.
In very, very different ways. And I was really curious to find, because I know that David Fincher, everyone loves David Fincher. He's only had 4 blockbusters in his career. And I was really surprised to find out that Benjamin Button was one of them.
That's sad.
It's
his worst movie.
I think it's safe to say that that's the worst David Fincher movie. 4 of his movies grossed $100 million domestic. Gone Girl, his highest grossing one, was $160. Benjamin Button was $128. The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo was $102, and 7 just got past the $100 million mark.
Yeah, I forget that Fight Club wasn't as big as maybe in my memory it seems like it should have been because of the cultural impact it had, but
it had a long tail. And I think Social Network was at 99, just underneath 100. Yeah. So your name, Makoto Shinkai.
It's
Let's
Isabel.
talk about
That's
it.
my name.
Look. This is the bullshit I've got to put up with.
Do you want to kind of tell the plot of this one, or do you want me to kind of get in there?
Real quick. Your Name is a story about a boy and a girl who swap bodies in the great tradition of body swap movies. They wake up in each other's bodies every now and again. One lives in the city, one lives in the country, and spoiler alert, they're 3 years apart. Now, we talk in the Slack about, we talk a lot about what we say is emotional storytelling. Storytelling that doesn't really hold up to, quote, logical scrutiny. It's really interesting that you started this off with a Jordan Peterson riff, because what is YouTube film criticism other than just a bunch of Jordan Petersons spouting off about why movies have mistakes in them? The CinemaSins school of here's everything wrong with Back to the Future 2 or whatever.
Half
right?
of which is factually incorrect in its own way.
Sure. Now, Makoto Shinkai is probably... No, I think I'll go out and say it. I think he's probably the most sort of emotionally devastating filmmaker working in Japanese animation.
I would say in all of contemporary film. I'm going to make a very bold claim. I think that he's the best melodrama creator we have right now. one of the best ever, and his films hit like a ton of bricks. Everyone that I know of that enjoys them ends them like sobbing.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's like if I were to like do just like sort of a broad, like painting with a broad brush, I would say like, God damn it, what's his name? Mamoru Hosoda is the head, and Masaki Yuasa is the id, and Makoto Shinkai is the heart.
I think that's a very valid statement to make for all three of them. And
this particular, like, so the crux of the movie is like we get to learn about these two characters, sort of their routines, how they deal in their day to day, and they realize, wait, I'm in someone else's body. So they independently try to figure out who the other person is. But spoiler alert, they are split not only by distance, but by time, because one person is 3 years ahead of the other. So this opens up opportunities for all kinds of like wild, sort of Primer-esque time shenanigans storytelling. But it's also very heart-wrenching because it's kind of a literalization of the impossibility of human connection, or like true, actual human connection, not just through space, but through time.
Yeah, I think it's weird because I think it's a crowd-pleasing movie. I think by the fact that it made such a huge box office, it is clearly very crowd-pleasing, but it's also a movie that's about memory and losing memory. It's about not being able to connect, not being able to understand other people. It's about forgetting. It's about not being able to understand what someone else is going through. And it's about love that isn't fulfilled, let's say.
Which is par for the course for Makoto Shinkai's work. Because that everything we're saying about Your Name
could apply very much to 5 centimeters a second, or The Place Promised to Us in Our Early Days,
or
Someone's Gaze, which I adore. It's a short film he made that I think is absolutely
Voices of
incredible.
a Distant Star.
Yeah.
I mean, everything that we've seen, this kind of fits in. I mean, the Shinkai has like pet themes, but I think there's a key difference in this because it's as much as it is about forgetting and misconnections, it's also about how. I mean, it's not really about it, but this is what it kind of lands on: is that it doesn't happen a lot, and it may not happen to you, but all it's got to do is happen once, and all the world's puzzle pieces just fall into place, and everything is right with the universe. And you remember that one fucking thing you forgot.
Which, I'm almost at a loss for words for this film because it hits me so, like, it's like a bodily feeling, kind of the same way like a good horror film is, or like a good action film. It's like a body feeling more than it is a head feeling. And, I'm trying to think of a good way to say this, but if I just look at, like, for example, the skyboxes that Shinkai uses,
magnificent skies,
incredible skies. Like I would have all those as posters. I would have all those as like my dreams. I've literally had dreams that look like his skies, and
they all look like long exposures. They all look like you can see the courses of the stars, and if something is passing through the night sky, it leaves a streak. And the colors are not possible, but they're plausible. They look like big northern lights.
Yeah, and it reminds me of the fullness of feeling like when you were like a kid. It's very open-hearted, almost embarrassingly open-hearted. I could see this movie easily coming across as pandering or kind of silly if you're not there for it.
Well, this is kind of what I was talking about regarding emotional filmmaking, because none of this movie makes any fucking sense.
No, not at all. Like the magic that's happening, the technology that's happening, none of it actually seems to work, but you understand it.
But it's like, because there's that nugget of humanity that sort of grounds it, and that's why you buy the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. And I think when you're talking about those puzzle pieces kind of coming together, the other day I had a smaller version of that where I was, there's this video game I played when I was like 9 or 10 years old as a demo in Walmart. I'd never owned the game. Yeah,
I remember you posted this about Twitter.
Yeah,
on Twitter.
I'd never owned the game. I never knew what the title was. Maybe at the moment that I played it, I did, but I never remembered it. And it was just kind of stuck in my head because it was one of the first times that I realized I was transgender. It was one of the first times, or at least I had an inkling of that. Because I saw a character that I identified with and I saw myself in that wasn't a dude. And it stuck with me so much, but I could never remember what the exact thing was. And the other day, I just happened to remember that, and I happened to figure out what the exact game was, and it was this almost overwhelming moment of everything kind of finally, it's the two periods of my life being bridged together in just a second, and seeing all the distance between them, seeing everything that happened from A to B, and it's like that magical final piece comes in, and this film is the way it lands and the ending of it, which you described as his best ending, which rewatching it, I still think 5 centimeters a second is slightly better just because it's a little bit sadder and I'm a sad bitch, but it works so incredibly well, because it ends on a note of hope that is magical without being unbelievable.
Sure. I still think that Place Promised is both his best movie and his best ending. Because
I need to rewatch it sometime because I adore Makoto Shinkai, but that's the one of his that didn't work for me. But I think maybe it was just a certain day. Maybe there's something like a bug on my ass or something.
I think the scale and the emotional pitch it goes for, and I kind of like the sort of... not that... I like the polish on Your Name. I do kind of like the lack of polish on the older movies.
You like the faces in like Voices of a Distant Star?
I think... I don't know if I like them. I can appreciate them as like someone just like building a movie from scratch. I mean, the skyboxes are already there. I'm willing to take the L on the faces.
Okay, yeah, fair. Although I think that the character acting, both in the vocal performances in this film and also the facial animation, is incredibly effective.
Yeah, and I mean, clearly this is the most money he's had to make a movie.
Yes. It looks as pretty as a Ghibli film, and that's saying a lot.
Yeah. God, there was something else I wanted to say about this.
We're running out of time. Just,
Okay. This movie is... I don't know if you're familiar with the Electric Light Orchestra's 1981 album Time.
Wow, what a Derek pull. Go on.
Okay. All right. So, I don't know. I don't know if you have any thoughts on the Electric Light Orchestra.
I'm fine with them. I have no strong feelings one way or the other.
Okay. So, in 1981, so kind of like post their heyday, they put out like a synth pop album, basically, called Time, which is a concept album about like someone who wakes up, kind of like a Rip Van Winkle situation where someone wakes up in the future and there's robots, but he falls in love with like a cyborg lady, and it's a whole thing, and it's a pretty good album. And the second track on the album is called Twilight, and to tie it back to anime history, that song was the soundtrack to a trailer for a convention called Daikon 4. And that trailer was made by either dudes who were about to be members of Gainax. And that song, this movie, Your Name, I think is like the perfect literalization of that song and that album and that feeling, because that song has like this grand Springsteen-esque piano crescendo, and it's a hell of a song. And obviously Twilight is like a huge sort of plot point in the film. Yeah. So, and my first Letterboxd review of this was literally just lyrics from that song. Because it's about dreams and not knowing if you're awake or not and stuff like it's a whole thing. And this was Derek's big tangent about ELO.
I mean, to be fair, I can't imagine a more Derek point of reference than an ELO song that was in the trailer for a convention that was made by people who would later go on to be in Gainax.
Yeah, don't quote me on any of that, but most of that is true.
We need to move on, but the only thing I want to say last is that my Letterboxd review for this, the one I just made, like a real quick capsule, is just outside of possibly Malick, there is no director currently working who understands the divine religious power of affect as well as Shinkai. And when I say I'm at a loss for words, it's because this movie makes me feel so much more than almost any other film I can think of, that I'm filled with the emotion, and it went past my brain and just embodied me. But what we need to talk about a movie that's all brain.
Oh, all brain. If this was all heart, this is all brain. This is a cerebral assassin of a movie. And I just snuck a wrestling reference past you. Awesome. Moving on to Gone Girl.
God damn it. I was hoping there'd be something for me to say, but I couldn't think of anything. It was just frozen in, like, silence.
Give me at least that.
You're right. I'll leave that silence in just so everyone can understand my paralyzed moment of fear that this was going to become a fucking wrestling podcast. Every other podcast in existence at this point.
Is there really like a plurality of wrestling podcasts?
I mean, I feel like all the podcasts that I used to listen to have become wrestling podcasts. Like, I Don't Even Know in Television is half a wrestling podcast now.
Yeah.
You have Giant Bomb. They talk about wrestling all the time. Wrestling's back, baby, in a big way.
It never left.
Well, left mainstream, like, culture, but it did. There was a definite lull between, like, the Rock period, and there was obviously like John Cena was popular, but like it wasn't a thing people really cared about. At least in the it wasn't cool to care about it for a while. Now it's back to being cool.
Yeah, the ruthless aggression era is not fondly looked upon. So like post The Rock pre CM Punk, probably better off not thinking about it. But let's talk about Gone Girl instead. This is a great movie. And I think it's a top 3 David Fincher movie for me.
I think I would agree, actually.
Okay. I'm glad we're on the same page.
It's a little close because, like, I love The Social Network, I love Zodiac, and I love Alien 3. If I had to drop one of those, I don't know which one I'd drop, but...
So this movie, if you're not familiar, dear listener, is about a couple of assholes who get married, and the mind games that they play upon each other.
Speaking of anime mind games,
so, yeah. Oh yeah, that's a good movie. Chris, shout out to Chris Mello who bought me Mind Game on Blu-ray for my birthday.
That was completely irrelevant, wasn't it? Keep going, Derek. Sorry to continue to derail this podcast every single time we get any momentum going. Jesus Christ.
You are the derailer. So Gone Girl, Ben Affleck wakes up one day and he like farts around and he's like, oh shit, where's my wife, Rosamund Pike? And,
my wife, Rosamund Pike.
Rosamund Pike. God, oh man, I don't even want to entertain this. Anyway, Rosamund
Borat's
Pike.
coming back, baby. Borat jokes were very funny for like a week after Borat came out, and then they were the least funny thing on earth for like 5 years. Now they're getting back up there. I feel like the longer we get out from Borat being important in any way, shape, or form, the funnier it is to make Borat references.
Here's a joke. What does Borat say when he's depressed about his lot?
I don't know, dude.
I'm alive.
Oh God. My favorite one, I think I'm stealing this from Scott Aukerman on Comedy Bang Bang, but what did Borat say when he finished setting up his router?
My Wi-Fi.
My Wi-Fi.
There you go.
There we go.
So we're just doing other people's bits. Is that it?
Yep. We're just stealing people's bits and just putting them on this podcast. It's like we're bootleg bits. I can tell you other bits from Comedy Bang Bang if you'd like. We can tell some Harris Whittles jokes.
I'm going to go shave too. Gone Girl, goddammit. Ben Affleck wakes up one day and finds Rosamund Pike, his wife, gone. And Gone Girl. She's a gone girl. And what we come to find out is that these two people are pieces of shit.
Yes.
One of them is the slimiest asshole this side of a slimy asshole. And the other one is a fucking psychopath. But this movie is structured very cannily, as it would be because it's a David Fincher film. You spend basically the first half of the movie going, man, what a slimy piece of shit Ben Affleck is. And Rosamund Pike seems okay, and then the turn happens. And then it's like, now it's like a battle of who is the biggest piece of shit. And it's here, with a lot of David Fincher movies, it is toxic but hilarious. It is thorny as shit, but there's like a pitch black humor to it. It's got a deep supporting cast, a very solid bench, like all the way down. Carrie Coon, Neil Patrick Harris, Tyler Perry.
Scoot McNairy,
that's true. And So it's basically it's a murder mystery where no one dies.
I just want to say before we go any further, speaking of slimy assholes, our sponsor today is Bad Dragon. See, Bad Dragon, that's the kind of shit you can get if
Lord.
you hire us, if you pay us to talk about your product. That kind of segue work there. But yes, this is a movie where I went in not expecting to like it. I'll be fair. I don't know why. I just, for some reason, was under the impression that I didn't like David Fincher films, even though I like pretty much every David Fincher film. I have some weird opinions on things sometimes. But I went in not expecting to like it, and I ended up just loving it straight through. I think Rosamund Pike is, if she didn't win, did she win Best Oscar, Best Actress that year for an Oscar?
She was nominated, but she didn't win.
She should have. She's incredible in this film, also incredibly magnetic in the most almost off-putting way.
Yeah.
I think Ben Affleck is also very good in it. I think Tyler Perry is a really good actor in movies that he doesn't write and direct.
Yeah, Tyler Perry might be the secret MVP in this.
Yes. And the thing that I found so interesting about it is the way that it constantly twists audience perception and audience sympathy.
Mm-hmm.
And because you feel a certain frustration for, is it Nick? Is his name?
Nick Dunn, yes.
Yeah. You feel a certain frustration for Nick at first because you're like, well, I kind of knew he didn't kill his wife because I'd seen the trailer for the film. So, I knew that wasn't a thing. So I was like, so he didn't do this. And people are judging the way he's supposed to be grieving and he's supposed to be acting when that's a really unfair thing to do, is judge how someone should act in a certain situation that you've literally never been in. And it's an incredibly traumatic situation. And then the more you find out about him, you're like, well, he fucking sucks. He's having this affair with this student who is 19 years old.
Yeah, it's Emily. I don't want to fuck up her last name.
Ratajkowski.
Ratajkowski, thank you. And I think she's mostly cast in these kinds of roles, but that's another conversation for, I think, a different podcast.
Yes. And then it switches over to Amy's viewpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And at first you almost feel a kind of sympathy because the way she explains her situation, she explains it in feminist terms.
Yeah, the cool girl speech is the pivot point.
Yes, and she explains it in these terms where me, as a feminist, no surprise there, this is a podcast full of SJWs, sorry everyone. Sorry all the Jordan Peterson fans still listening to us. But as a feminist, I'm kind of primed to react to those things in a way that's understanding. And then the more her story goes on, you're like, oh wait, she didn't really handle the situation in any way that's moral or decent. And even though her grievances might be just and her grievances might make sense, the way she actually attacks those grievances are so calculating and so fame hungry.
Sure.
That you end up just hating both of them in a really almost enjoyable, fun way. The only person who comes out of this looking great is Margot, who plays Nick's sister. She comes out because she basically didn't know anything that was happening. So she comes out fine, but everyone else ends up looking like a piece of shit.
Yep.
Even Neil Patrick Harris, who plays the creepiest creep that ever did creep.
Yeah, he dies real good, too.
He does die hella good. And I think it's worth, just for a second, opening up. This is way too long of a discussion to get into for the full podcast, but there was a controversy when this film came out, or controversy is not maybe the right word, but there was some discussion, some criticism as to whether the film was promoting ideas of women as liars and ideas of false rape allegations being common.
Sure.
And those kinds of things. How do you react to those criticisms? I mean, I think they're kind of, they make sense out of context. When you put them in the context of the movie, I feel they're not really fair to what the movie's trying to do, but I wanted to hear your opinion.
I mean, that's at the risk of sounding like I'm balking at the question. That's pretty much where I landed. This movie, this is the kind of movie that would attract, for lack of a better term, discourse like flies on shit.
Yes.
But no, I mean, obviously if taken in a vacuum, it's, kind of shitty. But when considering the context of the story, I mean, it's still thorny, but it makes sense. Whether or not these should be narrative devices, that's a whole other discussion. But I think the only way where you could say this is promoting these ideas as if you read this film in bad faith.
Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with that. I think that, I mean, obviously I don't want to be like super broad. Maybe there's a reading that I'm not seeing, or maybe there's a reading I haven't seen before that I would agree with more. But I feel like when we say that this film is promoting certain ideas, we're ignoring the fact that Rosamund Pike is a bad character. Like,
yeah, well, also
that Amy's a bad person, and that she's using these genuine grievances. She's using these genuine issues as springboards to do what she
awful
wants.
Things. Like, as much as patriarchy created Nick Dunn, patriarchy created Amy Dunn.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's something we're going to get into when we discuss Blade Runner, because there's some problematic gender politics in Blade Runner, and I say that as it's my favorite movie of all time.
Problematic gender politics in a film made in the 1980s, you don't say.
If you can believe it.
How about that?
But we have 37 seconds left. Do you have anything else you want to say about Gone Girl before we duke it out?
Oh, man. I think it's good Ross Resner score. Good unnerving opening credits sequence. Fincher's really good at these. Just the way that it cuts. It's very simple and elegant, but it's still really unnerving. And I think this is a top 3 Fincher.
Okay.
And here's the part where I don't want to metagame, but I'm going to metagame anyway. David Fincher is probably one of my favorite working directors because, save Benjamin Button, I haven't disliked a single thing he's made.
I would agree. I mean, not necessarily in terms of like my favorite working directors, but I think he's consistently incredibly good at what he does. And some of his films like Zodiac and The Social Network, I think are genuinely like masterful. And
even like quote unquote minor Fincher, like Panic Room. It's a good fucking movie.
Sure is. Yeah.
Now, David Fincher got 3 movies into this tournament. We've already said bye-bye to 7.
You said bye-bye to 7, to be clear.
Yes, but you...
I acquiesced.
You conceded. And we've got this, and further up the bracket, we have Fight Club, which, if I remember correctly, faces The Handmaiden. A movie I have not seen.
Neither have I, but it's got lesbians in it, so I'll probably like it.
It does have lesbians in it. That's
my criteria for whether I like a movie or not. Sorry, everybody.
So what you're saying is that you dislike most movies?
Yep, most movies are bad, except for the ones that have lesbians in them. And Your Name. That's the 2 good movies.
The 2 good movies. So, yeah, I don't want to metagame because I want one David Fincher movie in round 2. I can't guarantee that Fight Club, a movie I like, that I recently rewatched, and recently like a year ago, but I can't guarantee that it's going to win against The Handmaiden. I think that Gone Girl is a better film than Your Name.
I think that Your Name is one of the best films, and I'm interested to. Are you going to use a veto on this one?
Because I want to sit on my vetoes a little bit.
That's fair.
Because this is our 21st pairing. Mm-hmm. There are 128 pairings in round 1.
Jesus Christ.
So I've already used my 1 veto for the first quarter. And if I were to use a veto now, I won't be able to use a veto. At least I won't allow myself to use a veto until we get to the 64th pairing.
Yeah,
if you're doing the math correctly, that's in 90 episodes.
Yes.
So, do I want to use a veto on Gone Girl? I do want to open up a small parenthesis. What happens if we run out of vetoes?
Then we just argue until we make it work. I think that's the only way that's the only thing we can do. Oh, no. Remember, I think we agreed that if we can't decide, then we bring in someone else for an extra episode at the end of this round where we decide all the undecideds.
Okay. Oh, man. I don't know if one person should wield that much power, but
we could get 2 people and have them disagree and then be at the same place we were.
We would need a full panel of 3 people. We would need to get the rest of Dim the House Lights in on this.
That's actually a pretty good idea. If we can organize all of them. But,
oh, man.
That's for a different time to worry about. For right now.
I think you would be more willing to use a veto for Your Name than I would be willing to use a veto for Gone Girl.
Okay.
So, oh, man. God. Also, I don't know if either one of these movies goes up against the movie that I think is going to win next. So does it matter?
I think if the movie that I want to win wins, that being Your Name, I think no matter what wins next, it will lose next round.
Yeah, I think I agree.
No, I mean the movie that wins next will lose. I think Your Name will beat it.
Really?
Yes.
Man.
I mean, what I said in the chat, like, that I still stand by, like, really hardly, like my, if I had a choice, okay, there's a new Malick movie coming out, there's a new Richard Stanley movie coming out, and there's a new Makoto Shinkai movie coming out. You can get a pass to one of them to see it early. Which one do you choose? I choose the Makoto Shinkai one. I don't even think he might be my least favorite of those three directors, but he's the director I need to see more. He's the director that, like, he fills, he destroys the cynic in me.
And thus upon hearing this very heartfelt, very earnest statement from his friend, Derek said, "Fuck that noise." And, God, do I want to do this?
It would be a dramatic upset if you did.
It would be a dramatic upset. I think I'm just going to have to put my eggs in the Fight Club basket and just let you have this.
Okay. So just before, because I have something to say after that, but I just want to make sure before we move on. So Your Name is moving forward.
Yes.
Cool. So I'm metagaming a little bit. So I want to explain to you what my reasoning here was. If you would have used a veto for Gone Girl, I would have used every other veto I have to make sure that Your Name moves forward.
Can you stack vetoes?
Yeah, remember we talked about that in episode 0, is that if one of us vetoes and the other one doesn't like that, we can use our veto, and whichever veto is the most recent counts. So then you could use your third veto, I would use my third veto, you would use your fourth, I would use my fourth, and then I would win.
I don't think there's a movie in this bracket that I would spend 2 vetoes on.
And I want Your Name to win this whole thing. Let me be straight up. I want Your Name to win this whole bracket. I don't know if it will. I think it's unrealistic for me to think. I think I'll force it through far enough and then it'll die, but
I think it's got some stiff competition.
Speaking of stiff competition, let me talk to you about our sponsor.
Oh my god.
Anyways,
All right, so yeah,
congratulations, Your Name.
Beating, I'm putting all my eggs in the Fight Club basket to get David Fincher into round 2. So let's talk about some other movies.
Yes. Hopefully I think this one will be easier.
I feel this one will be a little easier. First up, the 51 seed Apocalypse Now, released in 1979, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. Based on Heart of Darkness by Joseph Conrad, starring Martin Sheen, Marlon Brando, Robert Duvall, Dennis Hopper. A hit, $150 million in oldie time, late 70s money. Box office versus a $31.5 million budget. 2 for rated the Oscars, winning for cinematography, Vittorio Storaro, and sound mixing. And, a movie of some cultural significance. Yeah,
you could say that. I've heard of this movie a couple times before. I think it's it's part of the conversation.
Yes. Going up against number 208.
That was a pun, by the way.
Was it a pun?
The conversation.
See, I'm reading my notes so I can make the show go forward.
Well, that's why I'm here, just to constantly make sure that the show does not move forward.
It moves like sideways into a ditch off a cliff.
We're like 15 minutes into this episode, and we're not even with our second lineup yet. So I think I'm doing pretty well.
I think you're just shooting yourself in the foot having to edit around this.
Yeah, you're right.
Number 208, Before Sunrise, released in 1985, directed by Isabel's nemesis, one Richard Linklater.
We'll get to that. We'll get there.
Starring Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy. A modest hit, a $5.5 million box office take on a $2.5 million budget, and Linklater taking home the Silver Bear for Best Director from the 1995 Berlin Film Festival.
Before, let's keep going forward, and we'll hit it when we hit it. Don't worry.
Okay, so should we talk about Apocalypse Now?
Yeah, let's go for it. It's the third best Coppola film.
It's up there. I think it might be like the third best Coppola film from the 70s.
I mean, it's not The Conversation, but none of those hold up to Twixt.
I haven't seen Twixt. I know you're a big Twixt fan.
I'm a huge Twixt booster. That's my job here. I boost Twixt. I boost
Do you also boost
Charles
Twix?
Burnett. They're fine. Actually, I don't think I can eat those anymore. Holy shit. They
Well,
probably
they got
like
have
milk and
chocolate
shit,
in
right?
it, so yeah.
Yeah. Well, like dark chocolate doesn't, but
I don't think it's dark chocolate.
if I had are there dark chocolate Twix?
I had-
shit up.
I had semi-dark Polish chocolate for lunch this afternoon, and it was fucking great.
Wait, was that your whole lunch?
No, it was like I had a sandwich.
I was concerned for you for a second. I thought you were just like living that like 7-year-old who doesn't have a parent in the house life for a second.
Very, very quick tangent. I got a hot tip from a coworker that I should go to a Polish deli to get a sandwich. And so I did. And then I went and I asked, "Yo, can I get a pork sandwich?" And then this fucking like 50-year-old Polish butcher who looks like a fucking wrestler looked at me in the eyes and said, "Everything here is pork." and I said, "Okay, well, what?"
I love that.
And I asked him like what do people have here? It's like usually people just get a ham and cheese, so I got a ham and cheese. And damned if it wasn't the best ham and cheese sandwich I've ever had. But they had a limit. They had a minimum that they had to use their debit card. So I bought the ham sandwich, which was $4, and it was a heavy ham sandwich. So I bought that, 2 bars of semi-dark Polish chocolate, and no shit, a bottle of Fanta the size of my fucking forearm, and it cost me $10.
That's a good deal.
That's a good deal. And that was Derek's food corner.
Also, just as a side note, I looked up the ingredients in Twix dark chocolate, and it has milk and soy in it. Oh, it has milk in it. The soy, I don't care about. The milk is the issue, but, you know.
Tough shit, I guess.
Oh, well. I just have to stick with my... I eat a lot of Sour Patch straws now.
Mm-hmm.
Those are like a thing. Or I just discovered Mike and Ike's has a sour version that's delicious.
I like a Mike and Ike's.
Yeah. This is even more irrelevant than usual, isn't it? So, Francis Ford Coppola, The Conversation.
Yes.
No,
Good
Apocalypse Now. Fuck.
Also a good movie.
Also a good movie.
So Francis Ford Coppola's made a lot of great movies, and he's also made a lot of not great movies. But in the late 70s, he still had his fastball, to use a sports analogy.
He always goes for it. Let's say that.
He always goes for 100% of the time. Even like the bad shit is like high concept.
Yes.
So Apocalypse Now is one of the great bummer movies of the 1970s, and that makes it high in the running for one of the best bummer movies of all time.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. Although not a dungeon movie, as you termed it.
Not a dungeon movie. This movie was shot by Vittorio Storaro, who got an Oscar for his trouble. And it's very painterly. It's a very beautiful film about atrocities. And if you didn't know, this is a Vietnam movie. It's about Vietnam. It's about the conflict in Vietnam. But just the blues and oranges and grays and the light and shadow that Storaro conjures just makes this movie. Coppola spent the 70s working with like the Mount Rushmore of cinematographers. He knew who to get to work on his movies.
Oh God. Here's the problem with doing this in Slack is that I saw that Juan sent us a link to a definitive documentary about the movie Showgirls. I just got distracted by that and missed everything else you were saying.
I mean, sure, okay. I mean, I think I don't think I'm like a Showgirls true believer like you and Juan are. I think it's a very entertaining movie. I don't know if I want to watch a documentary about it. I think explaining the movie would not make it go higher or lower in my esteem.
Have you ever read It Doesn't Suck, which is like that little book about like why Showgirls is actually delightful?
I have it in my Amazon wish list, and I do think that Adam Naiman is an excellent film writer. So let's put it that way.
It's a great book. And I mean, Apocalypse Now is no Showgirls, but one thing I was surprised by, I guess, is that this is a fun movie? ? It's a movie that I didn't. I mean, we say it's a bummer movie, and it is. It's a movie about awful things happening and about the like horror of war and the horror of like humanity and the ways in which we harm each other and like defile like the natural world and ourselves, our natural instincts. Sure. But it's not rough to get through. It looks so gorgeous, and there's so much like the dialogue is well written and interesting, and there's such forward momentum in it that I never felt bummed out or like sad watching it, if that makes sense. Like I would put it on in the background, kind of the same way I put like No Country for Old Men in the background. That's also a bummer movie that about the awfulness of like the human condition.
That's closer to a dungeon movie than this.
I think we have different definitions of dungeons.
I mean, yeah, but what was the original dungeon movie?
It was Prisoners.
Sure. Okay. So yeah, I feel like I feel like No Country is a bit closer to that than this. But I don't know if I found it as raucous as you did. Like, I feel like even something like Full Metal Jacket, which is not even like, which is not a light movie by any stretch of the imagination, is more raucous than this.
I don't think raucous is the right word. I think I found it, it was a pleasant, it was a foreboding ambience to exist in, but I'm also the kind of person who listens to dark ambient music to like relax. So it was that kind of same like beautiful background sorrow, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess I can kind of get it, because not for like nowhere at this point are you not in the hands of a master, and that is kind of comforting, even if the subject matter isn't. Like, the reason that the greats are the greats is not necessarily because they go swinging and they like go swinging for the fences every time or do wild shit every time they're at the plate. Like, the greats are the greats because they nail even like the layups, you know? Like, early in the movie, whenever like Martin Sheen is laying in bed and he's looking at the ceiling and you hear the helicopters over the ceiling fan, that's like 101 stuff, but it's awesome. And that's like a layup. That's just like an easy shot from like 2 feet out, but it's nailed. It's perfect.
And I think like even some of the goofier stuff, like, what is it? Kilgore is his name?
Yep.
Yeah. Kilgore is a weird character and almost a comedic character, like an incredibly darkly comedic character.
Sure.
It feels like when I look at this movie abstractly or from a distance, it feels like that should interrupt the vibe and that should kill like this general mood that the film's going for. But somehow Coppola sustains that throughout, and he sustains this. I'm trying to like figure out like a good musical comparison to this mood. Weirdly, it might be The Doors, even though I hate The Doors. But like, this is the best use of The Doors, and I think that droning kind of repetitive, heavy, and like it's rock music without the energy. It's not like
Sleep or something, because
no, that's too fun. If anything, it's more like Weakling.
I have no idea who that is.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of now that I say it, it's kind of an obscure reference. But it's more black metal than doom metal.
Okay. Okay. I mean, you can still hammer at that musical comparison, but I think now this is like watching an atrocity in slow motion, but in a good way.
Did you mean the podcast right now? No. As neither of us know what to say about anything.
I mean, I'm just kind of flabbergasted by it as a piece of filmmaking. I mean, I know that's not exactly the most insightful thing to say, but it's an achievement, and everyone has their fastball. Brando shows why he's a legend. Martin Sheen is a real underrated actor.
Yeah.
Fucking even Harrison Ford, Larry Fishburne.
And I think that's the best praise I can give it is that I saw this when I was like a teenager, and it was one of those movies like, oh, this is a great movie. I loved it. It was great. But it was like, It was teenager great, where you think every movie that's like somewhat famous is great. You know what I mean?
Oh, it's still great.
No, that's what I was going to say, is that rewatching it, I was shocked that I still found it as good as I did as when I was a teenager. I was shocked that I still found it to be this like monumental piece of work.
Ah, man. Yeah, well, obviously it had a famously tumultuous production process.
Mm-hmm. Which I've never seen that documentary. Apparently it's good, but Hearts of Darkness.
Apparently it's good. Hearts of Darkness.
But we all know that documentaries aren't real movies, so, you know.
Documentaries aren't real movies because none of them are on this list. Shorts and docs are for cowards. So I guess we've got to like rip the Band-Aid and talk about Before Sunrise.
I mean, I think it's more us talking about Richard Linklater.
How much time we got left on the clock for Apocalypse Now?
We ran out a while ago. I stopped. Okay. I didn't want to stop us.
So let's talk about the boss from Austin, Tricky Dick Linklater himself.
I just found that very funny. Derek, tell everybody tell everybody how Richard Linklater is your favorite director ever, and that you love Slacker and Waking Life, and that you would die for this man or whatever.
No, I'm not quite as enamored as you're laying this out, but it may seem that way compared to what your opinion of him is. But now let us. I'd like to do a little bit of setup for this. Let's go back into into the old times, into the Tumblr days, into the 30 Below days. Isabel's first go around in podcast land was a podcast where her and a guest talked about a movie that was critically disliked. And I was on that show to talk about Johnny Mnemonic, which is a movie I like.
Good movie. Better than anything Richard Linklater has ever made.
See, here's the thing. The second season of that show was the script was flipped a bit, where she would talk about critically lauded movies that she disliked with someone who liked it.
To be fair, I did that once, and it was with you for Waking Life.
I thought other people were in on this. Nope. I didn't know I was the only one.
I needed to tell the world how much I hate Waking Life, and you were the best vehicle I could imagine.
A movie I still liked upon rewatch.
A movie I liked even less upon rewatch.
So, as you may have gathered by little comments during this little portion of the show,
I think Richard Linklater's a shitty director. He seems like a fine human being, whatever, I don't care about that. But he's made
besties with your main man, James Benning.
Yeah, I love James Benning. It'd be great if he taught Richard Linklater how to make a film.
I still think that Linklater has a kind of pop fascination with time, the same way that Benning does, but doesn't have the formalist chops for it.
He doesn't have the discipline. He doesn't have he's too enamored with the dumb things his characters are saying, and he thinks a lot of things are profound that are really just like insufferable. Like Boyhood is like a couple great characters in search of a good movie. School of Rock is fine or whatever. Dazed and Confused is abysmal. Everybody Wants Some is somehow worse than that. Worst movie of the year. Worst movie of, I think it was 2018 or 2017. It was 2017 when it finally came out like in US. Worst film of 2017. Absolutely. A Scanner Darkly is the one movie of his I'll say is good. And I hadn't revisited that since high school, but I also think Slacker is fucking awful. I think It's Impossible to Plow by Reading Books. It's Impossible to Learn to Plow by Reading Books is comparatively better. And that's the best I'll say about it. So, imagine my surprise when I watched Before Sunrise and I didn't actively despise it. I still thought it was incredibly boring and stupid, and I think every character in it is like annoying, and I didn't like them. But it was the first one of his films where I've watched where I'm like, okay, I kind of get where people are coming from with liking this kind of stuff. It doesn't work on me, and I think that there's a lot of reasons it doesn't work on me. A lot of those are sociopolitical. A lot of those are his politics himself. I think Linklater is liberal, capital L, in a very, like, in a way that makes it very difficult for me to deal with as a leftist. And he's a humanist in a way that I think is also in a philosophical and political sense that I think is very hard for me to take seriously, because I'm trying to think of a way to phrase this, but like he thinks certain things of people that I think are a discredit to people. And I think that the way he presents those things, the way he presents what he cares about, when he finds interesting and what he finds moving, is insulting to those characters. I think he never moved out of like age 15, which is fine. Like I was 15 once. I'd said some like really like pointless stuff, and that I really thought was profound at the time. But like he's like what, like 50 now, like, and he's still making these fucking movies. I realize I lost everyone already. Like everyone else loves Richard Linklater. They want to suck his dick or whatever. I think his movies are terrible, but he seems cool or whatever. But Before Sunrise, like I said, is by comparison the best of his very talky movies.
So if I can get a word edgewise.
Yes, I apologize.
I mean, I'm kind of in the tank for the volubility and the sort of pseudo-philosophical stuff. He's not much of a director, but I think he's a pretty decent writer. I just like the sort of... I like the talky dorm room, smoking weed for the first time vibe of his movies. Like, I liked Boyhood. I liked Everybody Wants Some. All the movies that you disliked, I liked to loved.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's most people, to be fair.
And
I'm relatively alone in this searing hatred I have of the man's films.
Like, I'm not going to sit here and say that these, like, kind of reinvented the wheel. Or, I barely think any of them are, like, great movies. But I think they're easy hangs, and I think that's not something I necessarily value in all movies. It's definitely something I appreciate in his. It's like, not every movie has to be a good hang, but his consistently are. For me, obviously. Specifically to this movie, and I'm gonna
the most romantic movie of all time, as some critics have said, which is absurd. But
I mean, romantic as in love, I don't know. I don't think so. But there is an air of romance to it in like the capital
R sense.
The capital R sense, exactly. And the thing with that particular kind of romance is that it kind of starts to rust a little bit when you turn like 26. And also the sort of, the kind of luster of like the European trip where you find yourself kind of gets lost when your roots are in Europe already. Like, there's nothing romantic about the French if you're French. But that idea, the same reason I like a movie like, Night is Short, Walk On Girl, and the same reason I appreciate a movie like, After Hours, is that idea that the night has an infinite amount of possibilities, and literally anything can happen. And this is where it kind of ties in with Linklater's notion of how he films time. This movie is like a cool hour and a half, and Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy are with each other for like a maximum of like 18 hours. But those 18 hours feel like 3 days, but I feel in the best way possible. And that romance doesn't die as easily as the romance of like the meeting someone in Europe and falling in love or whatever. That sense of romance dies with great difficulty.
So I have two things. One, it's actually an hour and 40 minutes, and I felt most of the minutes of it. Not every minute. I felt most of the minutes of it. It was very long to me. And also, I like After Hours, and I also like Night is Short, Walk On Girl quite a bit. I think that the difference is that things happen in those movies. I don't need every movie to be movies where things happen. Like, I love James Bending. I love 13 Lakes, where it's literally shots of 13 lakes. But in a movie in which the premise is this night is almost unstuck from time. This night is infinite and anything could happen in it, and then nothing happens. It feels very frustrating.
Can I get another word in edgewise?
Yes. I'm
gonna stump for this movie because I know it's gonna fucking lose. So let me say my piece. I'm not gonna use a veto because it's not a better movie than Apocalypse Now.
Spoilers.
I mean, come on. I mean, I love this movie, but come on.
Hey, some people have said that this is one of the best films in the 90s, so. It's
a good movie.
Okay.
So, I think a lot of this movie doesn't have the raw incident and action of an After Hours or A Night is Short, because I think a lot of it is the action is a kind of interpersonal anxiety, or I guess the common sort of craft fair way of saying it is butterflies. Now I'm a wrinkled old man and have not experienced such a thing in a very long time, but I think that kind of electric anxiety that plays inside of someone over the course of this movie is its own incident. And that's something I can vibe with.
If we're talking about that feeling, which is a feeling I really appreciate and I love a lot when a movie can make me feel that way, Makoto Shinkai's movies do that a lot better, to be frank. I think there's a lot of other movies that do this. Like, I guess the main disconnect here is that this movie is so separate from any way that I've experienced relationships, any way that I've experienced love or dates, or even like that butterfly feeling, that it made it so it just rung very untrue to me. Whereas lots of other things, like, for example, there's this album that just came out this year, by Sir Baby Girl. And I don't remember the name of the album right now, which is bothering me, but it has this feeling of it's like meeting your first crush and like having this incredible feeling for them that you don't know how to express properly and you feel nervous around them. And it expressed that incredibly well. And I loved it because of that. And this movie just never it never rises to that feeling. The most it rises to is, oh, these are two kind of boring, somewhat annoying people who happen to seem to like each other a little bit. Which I totally fair that other people feel that it does raise those feelings within them. It doesn't work on me, I guess. Linklater's specific cultural experiences and the way he presents them are such turnoffs to me that anything he's trying to present beyond those seems just unpleasant in comparison. Or by association, rather.
Here's the last thing I'm going to say about it, because I don't know how deep we've gone.
We're slightly over time.
Okay. Ethan Hawke's character is kind of annoying, yes, but I think that character works because there's that anxiety and that jitteriness that gets slightly smoothed out as the film goes on. And Julie Delpy's character is like working in like the opposite direction. So it's like a 95-minute version of like those two feeling each other out and coming at kind of an emotional compromise, if you will. And I
won't, but that's fine.
You won't what?
I won't. Yes, you said if you will, and I won't. But I understand where you're coming from.
I mean, I guess that's all I can really hope for.
Like I said, this movie did make me understand what people see in this kind of movie, but I still don't like it. Is the long and short of it.
So I guess we can just give the belt to Apocalypse Now, right?
I mean, hey, if you want to debate about this, and like if you really want to go to bat for Before Sunrise, then we can. Like, I
could have the rhetorical skills of an old world god, and I would never be able to convince you that to like Before Sunrise.
To be fair, here's one way you could have moved forward with it, is if you made me veto first in the Your Name situation, and then you saved up one veto, and then you used it at this exact moment. That would have worked if you would have done that. Here's
the thing. I think that Before Sunrise is a good movie. I think Apocalypse Now is one of the greatest movies ever made.
Okay.
So, I mean, if you ask me to choose between those two movies, I take Apocalypse Now 9 times out of 10. But I have to stump for this.
No, that's totally fair. And I've been told by a couple people so far that they think I'll like the next Before movie more. So we'll see.
They get emotionally naughty and sad, from what I understand.
Which is more my vibe.
Yeah, it is.
So that was an exhausting episode, wasn't it, Derek?
Man, it's 1:15 in the morning here. I gotta work tomorrow.
It's 10:13. I also have to work tomorrow. But let's wrap this up so you can go to bed.
All right, so recap the two winners today and who will face each other in round 2. Your Name versus Apocalypse Now.
Dark Horse winner, Your Name.
It's going to be a shit show. So what's the back end stuff we got to do?
We got to say what's happening next week, and we got to give our Twitters and shit.
So next time on episode 12 of Middlebrow Madness, we're going to have another fresh set of 2 matchups, and they will be All About Eve versus A Beautiful Mind and Inception versus 8.5. What a weird fucking lineup.
And I'm not going to spoil anything. I'm going to be very vague here. But next episode, there's at least one movie that I find morally indefensible. So if you're interested in hearing me talk about that, you gotta tune in next week.
It turns out that Federico Fellini, I don't know how to fucking end this joke.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know where this joke is going. I haven't even watched 8.5 yet.
I was going to say is a fascist, but then I remembered that there was fascism in Italy for a while, and I didn't want to accidentally bring some stuff up. So, that being said, maybe I should just blow through this really fast.
Yes.
If you want to yell at us because of our picks or for whatever reason, there's a couple of ways to do that. You can hit us up on either individually or as a podcast on Twitter. You could reach the pod at middlebrowpod. You can reach Isabel at Space Jam Fan. You can reach me at Derek_G. You could send us an email at middlebrowmadness@gmail.com. Our shit is still open for recipes. Bad Dragon, if you're listening, hit us up for some sponsorship. And
and we should say, because we never actually say this, please subscribe and rate us on iTunes. We have 5-star ratings, which is great, and we have That's 2 awesome. Actual reviews, which are very nice and very kind. Thank you to both of you. But
tell your friends, if you got friends who like movies and shit.
We're not going to get that Bad Dragon sponsorship without some more ratings.
If we got to get those sweet dildo bucks. So tell your friends. And your parents, your grandparents, anyone please have Nana listen to our Bad Dragon sponsored movie podcast.
To be fair, I mean, my dad listens to this podcast, so I think at a certain point.
Hey, Isabel's dad, I can't believe you're still listening to this.
I'm sorry for all the things I've said. I'm sorry for my Twitter too that you have to read where I say awful things on.
I keep forgetting that your dad follows me on Twitter as well. So when I go on long protracted tweet storms about getting kicked out of orgies that never existed, I have that inkling. I was like, oh wait, Isabel's dad totally follows me on Twitter.
See, it's one of those things always in the back of my head when I'm going to make a tweet like the one I made a couple days ago where I said, if I could ask the president any question, I'd ask him which member of the Kong family makes him nut the hardest. In the back of my head, I'm like, my dad's going to see this.
Anytime I think about
it anyways.
Anytime I think about posting about pre-cum, I think about Isabel's dad. Maybe we should end the show before we say something illegal.
Okay. I've been Derek Gade.
No, that's me.
Nope. We're fine. I've been Isabel Arf.
I should have just said your name. I've been Derek Gade. Have movies, be jolly.
Have movies, be jolly. Good night, everybody.
Good night.